welcome back to Everything from Nothing. Stevie's on his phone again. Stevie hates this show, doesn't he, Hugh?
He does, yeah. Look,
he pretends like he doesn't.
Yeah,
He'll give out people saying this, but he actually hates.
It's good to have Instagram to get you through it, Stevie, because it can be quite boring.
It's a long hour.
Okay.
Yeah. Look,
No
he's not
interest.
even pretending.
And he'll give out now, pretend like he likes the show. He's never watched one episode back. That's an actual fact.
Yeah.
Because he's never watched one podcast.
Actually, how do you find it? Would you watch often an episode back?
Yeah, I spend a week watching the episode we just done.
Yeah.
So, like,
painful detail.
I sit around with the parents every night and we put on the podcast.
Hey, you actually do, don't you?
Yeah, we do, yeah. In the house, yeah. And just say, geez, that's really good.
Yeah.
Why isn't it on RT? That's what we do.
I used to watch them back, but then definitely watching them back is mad because you fair get to learn like how you taught. Definitely. I was like the quietest. I became more confident, like, and like better at listening to people in general day to day, like life because of it and stuff. So it's like cool because of watching it back and being like, oh my god, I interrupted him there, and you noticed I was doing that in real life.
Yeah, you'll see your different notions, tics that you have, or certain things you do before you're about to speak. You'll see it or hear it. Yeah.
And so we're actually joined by Conchobhar Ruadh. Am I pronouncing that right?
Ruadh, yeah.
Yeah. And Connor, I couldn't pronounce your name on Squelgo. What was it?
Crowher.
Because that's do you ever because on the Instagram and stuff that's what your name. Why is your reason for like? Are you trying to get people? Would you prefer if people called you? But
no, I don't. I think it was just in the moment. I was doing a lot around the idea of decolonizations, and I just thought maybe I saw other people and I thought, well, sure, why won't I at least use the official title? It's not to say that I'd be changing my birth cert or anything, but no, it was just a little act. There was no much thought into it of you have to dress. No, most of the time.
Yeah.
What you
said? Connor, you can call me whatever you want. Really, I've called it worse.
What's it? Decolonization.
Yeah. Again, I wouldn't be any expert at all. But definitely the last 6 months to a year, it's an idea that's been percolating. But
so what is that? Can you explain the idea what that is?
Yeah, so I suppose in Ireland it is the act of, I suppose they say, I know I got it from kind of Hawaii, colonialism in Hawaii, where they had certain steps in colonialism, because most of us are aware of colonialism, but then sort of these kind of certain steps with decolonization that I was really interested in. And so the first one will be like rediscovery and recovery. So I think you see that in, we're probably going straight into the deep end here.
But
in Ireland, I think you can see it in the last, it feels quite palpable now, or maybe it's just, I always joke, either it's just my Instagram algorithm, where there is a massive desire and interest for people in the Irish language and all things Irish. I think you see that everywhere. And I do think that comes from, and personally, I think my theory is, during COVID and whatever year it was, I lost track of all the lockdowns. Is it the second one or something, where we couldn't go abroad, but we could stay. Staycation. I think that was a little bit of the start of, where people started to realise, okay, first of all, they had to go. Usually they were used to going abroad every year, which I wouldn't say no to a bit of heat as well.
Yeah.
Right now. But I think they had to go explore, whether that was their local counties or, wherever we were in Ireland. And I think that was a little bit of the start of realising, actually, Ireland's not that bad, actually. Maybe we've a lot of us, especially young lads in towns, kind of had this, like, got to get out of this kip. And I think that even goes for Ireland, is like, this is a shithole or whatever. It's a kind of belittling of your own place, thinking that everywhere else is lovely. And I think that was kind of the start of it. So I think that, and with, like a man called McGann's book, 32 Words for Field, they would seem to be all coming out at the same time. And I think I even heard Mancon saying it himself, that maybe if he released his book 5 years ago, would have had the same effect. I don't know, who knows? But it seems to be a palpable desire for that. And I think that was the start of it, apparently. People appreciate in Ireland that actually, even our music, and maybe going down to Gaeltacht areas or whatever, into small towns. So that was the start of that. So I think you can see that rediscovery and recovery of people are coming back to it for whatever reason. There's an interest there. And then the next step would be like mourning. So I don't know if you kind of come up on your radar, but I've seen more and more now, because of what has happened with colonialism in Ireland and across anywhere in the world that has been colonised. There's obviously a lot of trauma that comes with that. And so there has to be an act of, when we obviously rediscover it and we're like, oh, this is amazing, there also has to be a period of kind of really feeling the emotion. I suppose like anything traumatic that would happen to me, if I just don't sit with that and kind of just try and tear on, it's going to catch up with me at some point. So, and I've seen even in the last year now a big cropping up of like grief ceremonies I know on my kind of radar, I've seen a lot of that, and I think that's not a coincidence again. With people rediscovering, and they're like almost naturally going into the next phase of mourning, of kind of, even for in terms of emigration and whatnot. Like there was a lot of physical, psychological, spiritual kind of trauma that people suffered. Specifically, we were talking about the Irish diaspora. So
What's the
diaspora?
Sorry, the Irish what?
Diaspora. I think I pronounced that incorrectly.
People all over the world. The Irish.
Yeah. What's that? I just never heard that word. I didn't know. I'm
So.
Well, I pronounced it incorrectly, I think, as well. So that's probably what's that.
I actually don't know. Never heard.
But yeah, the Irish people all over the world that spread.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's about even the next phase would be about like dreaming. So that will be about what do we want. I suppose even we're doing this all the time. What do I want? Even my individual life. What do I want to dream into existence? What do I want? And that's an important phase. I think we sometimes can jump on to like the next phase would be like commitment or action. But that kind of obviously there's no step by step. Oh, I've done the first step, grand.
Yeah.
It's obviously jumping around, but that's kind of what I've been playing with the idea of that, and how a lot of our attitudes now, in terms of, you hear it specifically with the Irish language in terms of it's a dead language, or it's pointless, it's useless. Why would you do that? You can't get a job with that. I think they are echoes of the past. Of our attitudes are a sign that I think our although we don't have a physical colonizer, like a rifle in our face, I think our minds, in a way, have become colonized, if that kind of makes sense. In a way, and I think you see it in those behaviours.
Yeah, I think our whole structure, like systematically, we are definitely, like, as in still colonized, and not like that again. Like, there's no gun to our face or anything like that, but like we're definitely still like turning the cycle. That it's a continued cycle of when there was actual guns in people's faces and stuff like that. Like, and I think that exists today. The thing I think the language is coming back. I think the only thing that I wonder, and 100% it's coming back. And I remember you used to say it as well. Like Stevie, even just before the pandemic, used to argue with people. Like, not argue. Even he's a very aggressive person, but he used to, like, you pointed out to me and made me aware of it that. You said that the language is coming back more than it ever has been in a long time.
Oh, yeah, I think we were talking about the idea,
Twitter and all that stuff you were seeing. Like,
yeah, we were talking about that idea of, like, because like it wasn't like someone said something on Twitter one day, and it wasn't like aimed at me or anything, but it was like, it just made, like, a lot of people are guilty of saying, I wish I could speak Irish. But someone on Twitter was like, they were like, Gael go right now, and they were bringing it up, and they were just saying, like, they know those people mean well, but if you really did wish you could speak Irish, you'd speak it by now, because they're saying there's endless resources online. There's so many people teaching it. There's so many free things online. If you really, really wanted to, if I really wanted to learn Irish, I would be speaking it now. So I was like, I kind of felt like I kind of saw the hypocrisy there. Like, yeah, I'll always say, oh, I wish I did it, but I don't. I don't ever put the effort in. So that's why I can't speak
and I
it.
think people are forgetting that as well. I think these are myths we also carry on ourselves, and especially even from parents with our negative associations and bad experience with Irish, which has happened. But then you even see it with thinking, obviously we've done so many years of the Irish language. I've done 14 years of school, I've no Irish, but I don't think that's actually true. When people say I don't have a lick of Irish, it's not actually true. I've seen that in some workshops where if I'm doing any meditations, I would be doing a kind of bilingual. So I would say in Irish then in English. And majority of the time, every single time, they would always say afterwards, like, oh God, I understood a lot more than I thought I would. I was really surprised. And I think people, it's just something that everyone else says, so they just say it. Because they're not fluent, they just say, sure, I've no Irish. Yeah. And I think, I've more Spanish, but even then, I don't know if they actually do. It's just, I think it's myths we've perpetuated, kept going. Yeah. Does that make sense?
There's a lack of confidence as well. So
massively.
You feel stupid, like, talking Irish when you're afraid. But I remember being in the Gaeltacht, and they didn't give a shit if we made a mistake or whatever, and it was just so relaxed, and not, up in Colossia, Lurgan, and everybody spoke Irish, like, in a relaxed way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were all confident going home on the bus. We were speaking Irish, but the confidence kind of goes again.
How do you bring it home? I suppose even that's the case, isn't it? Of, like, in a lot of ways, like, I think we have high expectations, or false kind of expectations of how we think we should do this, so that we quote unquote should be great at Irish because we do so much. But actually, at the same time, we're doing, in a normal school anyway, that maybe not be a Gael school, you're doing like 2 to 3 hours a week. Not very intensive. The teacher's probably speaking in English. So it's like, I don't know, training for a marathon. I think we just have to realise, maybe realistically, if I'm training for a marathon or something, I can't train a handful of times in a couple of months and then be ready to tear into it And then I'm shocked and appalled and really annoyed at myself and shamed into that. I can't believe I couldn't run 26 miles. But I've done nothing for it. And that's why I think the Gaeltacht does help, because it's more, you are surrounded by it. Now that's difficult to get that scenario, that situation.
I remember the thing as well that like someone said to me before. Now this was like a maths lecturer in a college, but it's like the same kind of thing applies with Irish. And he was saying that someone asked him before, like, well, how was he so good at maths? And he said, he was like, well, no one ever told me it was difficult. And he was saying, like, Irish and maths are like two of the subjects in school that you're told you're allowed to be bad at. So if you go home and you're struggling with like other like history, geography, English stuff, you're like, okay, I really need to work at this. If you're struggling with Irish, loads of people are like, sure, everyone's bad at Irish. So then you don't really.
I'm not good at languages.
Yeah, you don't like. I know some people, like, to be fair, some people just are like and that's okay. But there is like this thing across everyone that's like, oh, you're allowed to not put effort into that. Like, it's it's useless. You won't need it, and it's fine. So then, obviously, you're not going to like remember all the 14 years of what you learned.
No, so that's me. I think it's not as simple as that. It can seem as that's a boom, full stop. I've ended the whole debate if I'm like, well, I've been in school, but it's so multi-layered. And then if you go into the shame part of it, that's a massive part of, because I think when you ask that question of, why do we have such a disconnection? Why do we have such a bad relationship with it? That can seem, I think, at the beginning as such a vague, unanswerable question. But if you actually look into it, and that's a lot of my work now is having those kind of even like open discussions in a workshop where we're like, okay, well, let's discuss this. And then you're going into, first of all, even historically, like in a way, I think it's a miracle that we still have Irish now, considering like hundreds and hundreds a year of onslaught. No, it is, even to have, like, we're blessed, considering other cultures in the world that may have lost everything. We have almost everything intact, considering the pressure we've been under, and
because there is a lot of cultures that are still like alive and well. It's not like cultures, the only ones that lost their language are the ones that are wiped out. Like, there's many, like, when you compare the Irish culture to other cultures who are still around that did lose their language or only have little bits of it left, like, it's far from gone. Like, when you look at the Irish one, like, it's insane. Like, as in, even there was I was like, even within the government and policies, I was even like the other day looking at, like, when you have to form your company, you need to do like all the paperwork. It's like you can still put that in Irish. You can't put in a Native American. Like, now there's lots of Native Americans and stuff, but you can't, for companies in America, you can't use the native, and stuff like that. And it's very much still around. And but now I do think the next thing is, like, my only question is, you said two things. It's common things that are always said is that the language is dead or there's no point in it. Where I used to hear them most was in school, in secondary school, and I used to say those things too, especially the pointless one. When am I ever going to use the language?
Which I get it, especially from a point of view of a 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old.
Yeah.
It's understandable. That's not like a mad thing to say.
Yeah. My question is, like, how do we make it cool? Because I think with that age, like, more kids are playing soccer now than ever because they're on Instagram and the Messi Ronaldo thing blew up. Now every kid's obsessed with soccer. Like, what's like our Messi and Ronaldo or something to make Irish language really cool again? Because I think that's the way we get rid of that statement fully. Is if we can get kids in secondary school to stop saying there's no point in it, then we've changed it. And
I think, well, first of all, maybe it starts with everyone. We can, on an individual basis, what do they say, be the change you want to see in the world. Because I even noticed it with parents. Obviously we're handing down this stuff, and again, this we could say like a generational trauma, where if our ancestors had which they did, and we can touch on that, what has happened with them. If you have a negative attitude towards Irish language, that, like, let's say you really hate, like some people do, they hate it. Well, then you're going to pass that on within reason to your child. Because I noticed this when my son was going to school, so we got this little leaflet before he started, and they touched on a little bit in Irish in it, and they were saying, basically the summary was, regardless of how you feel about it, pretend like you're really supportive of it. No, they're really like, because they were like, but I remember thinking, this is mad that they have to say that. But fair enough, they do, because there are some people that are visceral, that are like, it is. And I also think it's, I don't know, I can't speak for any other country in the world or nation, but how it's so interesting. I don't know where else in the world you'd find the disdain people would have for their native tongue that I think a lot of people have. But it's not a simple answer. It's from,
I think it's,
I had a bit of both. I had a bit of absolute hate and a bit of love, right?
And I think that's very normal.
My absolute hate was from school. I hated it. And they go like conjugate the verb or some shit like that.
I don't even understand.
I don't even know what you,
I have no idea.
I don't know what you
It's
mean.
like bringing
Now,
English
is the table masculine or feminine? Think.
Yeah.
Is it masculine or feminine? What's the rule? And I'm going, stop. I don't know what you're talking
Do
about.
you know, honestly, I was actually reading that this morning, and I actually went, oh, yeah, because I had this grammar book. Then again, I would openly say that I am not I wasn't born in Gunnamara and I'm a native Irish speaker. I'm pretty good. I'm not excellent at all. Because people, again, kind of will assume then, maybe even watching this, oh, God, he must be
brilliant
at Irish. That, no, like, I'm all right, but also there is, especially with the confidence thing of, having to learn to actually, this doesn't have to be perfect and not to care as much because we're just terrified of, I won't say anything for fear of being judged or corrected.
Yeah, and you see that a lot with like people who I've seen a lot of my friends growing up who were Polish and stuff like that. They were like the quietest people in their school. Become the more naturally as they were, you thought they were extroverts and really shy, but actually it turned out they were the most introverted, confident people ever. But at the time, they just didn't want to sound stupid. And I think that fear is definitely there. Even it's ironic, obviously, because we're in our own country, but we still have that exact same fear of sounding stupid.
And you can see this though with well, I suppose historically we would have had like violence was used for a number of things in the education system, but like in one way we had it obviously at every turn. Obviously our kind of colonial masters would have been denigrating the language, so that would have been physically beaten into us. But even just in terms of the idea of it would have been spread that this is again backward, savage, not useful, not uncivilized. And then we have, we know of the Bata score. It was this kind of piece of wood that was attached around children's necks. Only, I think, in the late 19th century, 1880, 1890, and that was to discourage whenever you were caught speaking Irish. That was kind of a notch was put on it, and obviously at the end of the week you got whatever the punishment was for that from your parent. But then fast forward, we're talking like 1970s, and like our parents would have got the opposite, where then they thought, well, actually, now that we've got, especially maybe down south anyway, like 1922 independence, now we've got to make Irish important. So then they were like, well, how do we do this? Okay, we'll use violence to instill the love of the language, And I think that's a lot of, because that always works.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of our parents, and then that then carries on with us then of kind of, because I get it, it's hard, especially if you were beaten into you.
Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, my love then was my division of love in Irish was in Closhilurg and all these kind of hippie guys playing Bob Marley music on their guitars and talking away in Irish and not giving a shit whether you meant. I never once heard them. I never once heard them say, no, you said that wrong, or you know what I mean. They just talked away with you, and you'd notice yourself after a while.
And it's our natural absorption, isn't it? Like I know that's not as realistic to do that, but maybe the more people can use it, and it becomes a little bit more. Every day. It's not to say that it's easy or overnight thing, but it is. It's important to let go a lot of that, because we do. Like I always joke now, like there's shame around every fucking corner. There's if I don't speak the language, I have shame around that. If I do speak the language but I don't speak it enough, I have shame. If I meet someone who's better than me, a real Gaeilgeoir, I have shame and embarrassment. Like it's unavoidable. And I think we have enough shame in Ireland anyway, as it is. But it is, and it's there for a reason. Even I think I love this kind of piece that one of my teachers told me of, any kind of oppressor, any colonizer, and this goes for the world over, but specifically in Ireland, we were the first colony. Like we were, the Brits were at the time, or the English anyway, they were learning how to do this, and we were their first colonial, first colony. So they were learning how to do it, and they learned it well. But how they learned that you can only keep a people subjugated for so long by force. Because you realise, obviously, after a while, same as a dog, after a while, if you keep hitting a dog, it's going to bite you.
Yeah.
So what they realised was that, guilt and shame are the main enemies to personal power. So they realised that if you can take away people's language, if you take away their music, if you take away their stories, everything culturally related to them, and then on top of that pile on loads of guilt, loads of shame for people for just being who they are, for just speaking their own language, then eventually the people will control themselves. And that's when you get it with self-destructive behaviours, with addictions. So then you can see that we have very similarities with the Maori, with Native Americans, with Australian Aboriginals in terms of what are we known for in Ireland? We're known for massive issues with addiction, specifically alcohol. And that's whenever there's issues with addiction, although short term it's a student of pain. It's doing something that short term is helpful, pleasurable, but long term destructive. And so you see that, I think, with anyone, specifically the Irish person, even the Irish man, the father that's going abroad or emigrated, that spent all whatever the family's money on drink, and it's not to excuse that behaviour at all. But also there's deep trauma there, and it is to acknowledge that. It's not to excuse that, but it's a factor. And I think from maybe the perspective of like a colonizer or something like that, then it perpetuates that myth of these are uncivilized people. So look at the man drunk on the street there, Paddy in the corner there, and then that keeps it going the same, and it's a self-fulfilling cycle, I suppose.
It's a real trap, isn't it? And it's a kind of like a collective trap, like, and very hard to escape it. As well.
And you'll see even with and we would have found it with like the famine on Garth Moore. I suppose you could touch on it now. That I suppose like more and more in prominence the idea of it being a kind of an actual act of genocide. But how like before even the famine, the Irish language was already kind of on the it was kind of associated with kind of negativity or poverty. But specifically after the famine, like the famine would have affected the poorest areas in Ireland, which then would have been more likely the Gaeltacht area. So again, anywhere on the the coast, on the far reaches of Mayo, Donegal, Galway, Kerry, Cork. But with that, I suppose in the space of 4 years, there was like I think a third of the Irish speaking were vanished. We're talking 2-3 million people, where they either emigrated or died. And so with that, it was specifically after that then it was really reaffirmed that the Irish language, and I suppose all things Irish, but specifically the language, was associated with like poverty, despair, and death. And you can see, so it's when you start to see this, even a few minutes talking about it, it becomes very clear actually why there's so many layers to the shame, to the embarrassment.
And it's definitely, I even find I always have like very visceral reactions to the randomest things that like. But a question I have is, right, any idea, like, I know maybe like it gets into the realm. I basically like I don't have like mad like close connections. Like there's like stories of grandparents and all that everyone has, and who anyone's grandparents in Tipperary, but have stories around their love for the country and their fight for the country. And but like there's nothing that's ever happened to me. I never grew up on the border or anything on that. Like I don't know why I still emotionally, viscerally, and as a part I'm always trying to change myself because sometimes it gets into anger towards the wrong people and stuff like that, but like I get like this very visceral reaction and triggers to stuff that feel like, well, I wasn't actually there in the famine, and
why is it?
Yeah, like would you get that? Or
I think when you're reading, I have a great book. I'll share these afterwards. It's Anisha Hochton Tower, from Oro Shadavali, but it's that, and then it's trying to think. It was Ireland, colonialism, and something. I should forget that. He's an author from the north of Ireland, but it's like this beast of a book that is what I would describe it as like an exhaustive analysis of colonialism in Ireland from the moment like the Anglo-Normans came, but like touches on the effects of it all around the world and keeps comparing it. But it's with that you really see the.
What does that mean again? Now.
Initial Hochton Terry, and now it's the summer. The summer is coming.
Yeah,
summer is coming. I suppose it could be hopefulness for.
Now the summer is coming. Yeah.
But it's strange though that well, I don't know. It's always wonder what that's about. Like, because I think there are so many people like that as well. That like, same with me, that just have this mad deep connection to the land and stuff like that. To where on a level that like.
Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
Rationally, it's like it doesn't make any sense.
I had a kind of weird view of the world before, before I went to England when I was 17 or whatever, off to college or whatever. So, but from school, maybe it was like a Christian Brothers thing or something. I don't know what it was, but I was thinking like it was going to be us and them and all this kind of stuff. I had a really twisted view of the world.
And you'll find that now. I actually would speak a little bit on that because you'll find people. Sorry,
no, but like when I went over there, I realized they didn't know anything about this.
They don't have a clue.
They were like my best friends the minute I arrived.
It's us that are like.
They were so welcoming and so kind. I felt kind of guilty then for feeling like that,
And I know what it is, but I think we have to realise that as well. This isn't, especially if we're going into this, delving into this kind of a history of Ireland, that we're not, this isn't like anti-British or anti-English. Our issue isn't with the common English man.
No, they're lovely people.
Because it's always like the powers that be and whatnot. So, because I think people, especially when we're younger, it's like, Chucky Yarla. At 15, it can almost like anti-English, and like that's not what we're aiming. That's ignorance. Like that's not where we're aiming our anger.
The night before I went, we all went out, like all the friends went out drinking together, before we went, and they were all giving me these individual talks about what might happen when I go over. Like how to stand up for yourself.
None of it happened.
And if you and if you told them, they probably, oh, I'm sorry to hear about that, mate.
No, what I used to get is why you Irish always fighting with each other.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I will say with that is, unfortunately, they are, and again, it's not their fault.
No,
they're really
100%.
not educated at all.
No.
They really aren't. My partner Clay is actually from England.
Yeah.
Now, like her parents from Glasgow, and then they all immigrated came from Donegal, so they're all Irish. And again, she was associated being Irish. Like she always says, bless her, she was the only one in her family, and her sister that were born in England for her sins. But anyway, she always says that, she in school, obviously, because she would have then had the influence of Irish history and stuff. And she told me that one of her history teachers in England was like an ex-army, British Army. So you can imagine they were not touching on anything at all. And look, that's not their fault, but I think there can be sometimes an ignorance where, and again, it's not their fault. Where they don't actually know really the depth at which they kind of still think, we're just fighting ourselves, we're angry at anything, or and I think that can be a little bit disappointing sometimes. Actually, like they don't really know the depth that was caused. Not that we were sitting around all day, giving out about, because they're not getting in the victim mode of woe is me, a little old Ireland. But still, like, it's important to acknowledge what has happened. Do you know what I mean?
I think Brendan Behan as well was in Barcelona Boy, or one of those where he goes on about, like, they were saying, what was it terrible? He got locked up in, was it Barcelona? One of these places when he was in England. He said it was the first time he'd experienced real kindness. Like that, that they were, and that's what it's like. Even I remember I used to do police lineups in England for money, and like,
how does one get into that?
Poster.
Exactly, a poster in the student union. But it was like, and you'd accept like compare that to the guys I was out drinking with before I went to England. Like the last thing they'd advise you to do is go doing police lineups for a tenner a pop.
Oh my god! I just realised.
But I couldn't believe how kind the policemen were. Like, as in, hey, if you want it again, I'll ring you. You know what I mean? They keep it penciled in for the next police lineup, and they give you tea and biscuits, and
never living the dream.
They were just kind people,
No, of course, and that's what these aren't. Like, and we're not inherently bad people. And I suppose the same goes for us. We aren't inherently drunks and violent or whatever.
I do have to be honest though, because I'd love to say that, like, I'm like, my goal, I hope someday can be all about like peace and love to it's like true, and I definitely don't find it weird. Like, overall, I think my goal, and I think hopefully the goal for the world, is that there's just this element of like a universal love, and so like that everyone can have the love for their land and stuff like that, and to be able to forget and forgive and eventually, and that's my goal as well. But I definitely still do find myself getting like triggered, and it's like something in my soul, like my logical human self, like, or I don't know what way to describe it, but like I can understand that that's silly, and that like person who's English didn't do anything. I'm never going to be mad at an individual, but there is a part like that of me that would have got like angry, like my soul. It feels like my soul would have got angry at like if someone said, "Oh, you're always fighting with each other," because a part of me goes,
because there's a certain level of ignorance there. It's like,
we are always fighting with each other. Like, do you want to know why? Like,
I wonder why.
And I'd love to someday be able to, but a part of me actually feels like I'm doing them a service by not getting angry, but I'm doing me and everyone who came before me a disservice by not getting angry. But if I don't,
there's justifiable anger, absolutely.
And I never know. It's always conflicting, like, and it's weird. So I never know what to do.
Yeah, it's like it is the whole thing of like, but you're not angry at the individuals. You're angry at the system that led to that individual, like having the opinions or having the knowledge they have, or the lack of knowledge, and that kind of thing.
And I think a lot of the division or the anger that Irish people can't get let go of doesn't come from those fucking the arguments up north. It comes from like just silly little things like that, because it's like it's an ignorance thing that I think makes most.
What I actually found personally was I actually went to a university up in Derry.
Okay.
I had gotten into at the time accepting to Maynooth, and I was like, and then I don't know why, and still to this day it was actually where I met my partner Colette, so maybe I was guided up there, but I remember at the time I just wanted to go on an adventure, and I wouldn't have been like that brave at all at the time, but something was telling me I need to get out, get the flock out of here and go somewhere new, meet new people. So I went up to Derry, and that was one of the best times I ever had for a number of reasons. But I met my partner Clay up there, but I met some great friends that are still very, very close. I would call my close friends, but they're all from Belfast. But in that, I realised how ignorant I was of, even I think we are quite privileged down south that, It's not as visceral. Again, it's not as prominent. But like
Yeah.
my friends that were coming from West Belfast, Republican areas. Actually, it doesn't matter if they were even in. Didn't have to be strongly Republican areas, but that presence, even of he remembers seeing, the army, British soldiers on the streets. His grandmother, was kind of blinded by a rubber bullet. Stuff like that. And it's not to stoke up, that anger, but I think it's also, I definitely realised I really didn't know that much. And I think even our schooling, we touched, I remember doing it was a cold rain in the university, and that was supposed to be in Derry, but anyway, and it's a little bit of the civil rights, but not to the extent of, I always joke, I got like a degree in psychology, and then because of my friends, I really got like a diploma in like republicanism, or the history of actually what actually happened on both sides. And I found, for me, even if we're talking about English people to Irish people, I found, even from being, what they would call a free stater, I didn't know a lot. Now I get it now, even the idea of, we can be quite apathetic about it because we've had independence since 1922. But it's to acknowledge, even when we talk about the idea of decolonization, that we can't actually do that because we are still, our country is partitioned. Now again, I'm not ask about inciting violence or anything, because it's a really, really sensitive topic. But it's still, I have to even speak, not that I speak on their behalf, but I have the honour, actually, I have friends that have a complete different experience, and their parents and grandparents that our parents, grandparents would have had living down here. And it's just to at least honour that we can kind of forget that sometimes, that there was honestly a different world up there to us.
Like even something simple, like, as in, like, I remember learning about it in school, and like the fact that it's called the Troubles, which makes it sound like it's not as big of a thing as it was. And like,
those
I remember
rascals.
It's such an Irish
from
thing,
learning it in school, you just think, oh well, yeah, look, that's done now. It all ended with the Good Friday Agreement, and you kind of they move on to the next topic. Like, oh, now we're talking about like something else from medieval times in history. We've moved on or something. But like, I remember then, first time I tried to go to college, I went to Maynooth. There was a fair few people from Donegal. And I remember talking to one of them. They lived near like Donegal, Derry.
Yeah,
kind of border.
right in the border.
And they were just saying like, "Oh, did you hear about what happened in the such and such shopping centre last week?" And like saying to one of the other people, like, "No, what happened?" It was like, "Oh yeah, there was a bomb scare and everyone had to be evacuated." And I had that realization.
I had that experience.
I had that realization. I was like, "Shit, that kind of stuff is still not to the same extent, but it's still happening. There's still those scares.
It's in the air. Like,
there's still that fear. Like, it's mad.
It's a lot more visceral. It's
and we're so we're like protected from that.
I found it really interesting thing again was that so again, it doesn't matter. You were called, you're from down south. That's what it was, just you're southerner. But that didn't. I just thought, again, because I went, okay, that kind of makes sense. I'm kind of Wicklow and I'm down south. But that went for anyone that was across the border. So that was Donegal or Monaghan. So what I found interesting was that a lot of people that were just in the border counties like Monaghan took real pride in the fact that they weren't in the 6 counties. So I remember meeting lads and first year, second year, and they're like, "Oh, you're from the south." Me too. But they had this Nordy accent. And I was like, "You're not from the south." And they were like, "I am. Sure, I'm from Donegal." But they like aligned themselves with me like it was a point of pride that they weren't part of the north. It was just, I found it really strange. Again, it was just new things I never came across. I was like, "What?" But you're not from this. You're from like north of Ireland. It was weird.
We were up in Belfast a few months ago, and we went for a pint or whatever. And this this pub owner comes out. We were talking to us, whatever. We got crisps off him. We were talking about how the potatoes are different, that kind of conversation. And then he's like, "You're from Tip or whatever." And I think that guy was like kind of English or whatever. But because he goes in, and one of the regulars comes out 2 minutes later and was like, "Are you from Tipperary, lads?" And he had a northern accent. We're like, yeah. He's like, "Oh, it's good to talk to someone from the south like that." Like and he sat down with us, and it was lovely. But it was also interesting to see, to the owner of the pub or worker or whoever, who was like English, who kind of like, it was like, he had no problem. He's like, "I better tell this lovely man there's a lads down south to make him happy." I don't know, it was a very like, there was no argument between them or anything. They were good friends, but it was really interesting to see like your man come out, "Oh, I talked to lads from down south." Like,
we're the same.
It was like,
interesting.
It was like he didn't want to. It was like we reminded him of home, and it's like you're still home, and it's kind of
It was and the partition of Tato, like your Tatos and Free Statos.
Free Staters.
Free Statos.
Yeah, the packets are different actually.
It's mad. Yeah, that's my biggest prize. It's the only thing I kind of go.
I
is
do,
the Tato change.
honestly, I would recommend. It was great. Yeah, for that.
But they are. I'll be honest. The Tatos are nicer up there. There's a difference.
Oh,
there is a difference.
I thought they were nicer as well.
Yeah. Right, I'll
maybe
try it next time.
Guinness was making them nicer, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that does help. That does help for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, what's your like? Have you like? Do you have like a goal? Like, cause your mission. Like, I see you posting stuff like you're translating, interesting like maybe slogans or sayings that I wouldn't have seen translated into Irish and stuff. So
obviously affirmations, yeah.
So you're very much like, I don't know, yeah, it feels like your goal is to bring back, as much as like, what's your main goal with the Irish language, or what's your...
Yeah, like I'll tell you the truth, like, to be honest as well, like, this isn't something that was always there. Like, I was only chatting to you, like, I suppose my little scale with Irish is that I went to a Gaelic school when I was younger, from whatever, 5 to 12. So I was blessed that I had that foundation. And then when I went through like secondary school, definitely for the first few years, Irish language was what I would deem with. This was a handy subject. Like, I wasn't like I wasn't like, oh, this great, I'm a Gaelic, or I had no, I suppose when you're a teenager, I just had apathy about it. I wasn't like you would with nearly everything. You just like didn't really care. So it wasn't something that I wore with like a proud badge. But I saw it as, I was proud. It was a handy subject for me when
it's like PE or something.
So then, what I realised was, when you get into Leaving Cert, like anything else in life, eventually you do have to kind of work. You have to work at it. Same as that. If I don't do anything for 3 years, whether that's a subject or whether that's football or going to the gym, it's going to be difficult to pick it up again. So I definitely remember at Leaving Cert kind of going, oh, one or two people getting a little bit better than me, and I was like, oh, wait, this is not how it's supposed to be. And you do have to work at it. And I think even for that, I definitely didn't work enough on it, and I kind of let myself down a bit. Like, I probably should have done better in the Leaving Cert. But anyway, it wasn't something that I was prominent in my life. But when I went to Derry, to university, I met he was actually in my apartment. So one of my best mates, who still is now, he was studying Irish. He was from Belfast, and he was studying Irish. So that was my first kind of, as an adult, coming across someone that had an interest in the Irish language and was kind of pursuing it a bit. But also, it was my first time where I felt like that pang of shame, or I was embarrassed, because like, oh, he's really good at Irish. Because I was definitely a big fish in a small pond in my local town. Because there wasn't at that time. I think there was a Gaelic school only opening up, but I was the one that was known for good at Irish, but no one else really was. And so that was my first time remembering that. So a little bit of interest came maybe kind of republicanism, and learning about the history and stuff, kind of coming back. And on the way home at nights out, you'd be like Laura Tasquelga a little bit. But it was still there, but also it was that kind of shame. But first time going, I kind of maybe went a bit embarrassed if I couldn't think of a word. I could understand it all, same as that. It was a confidence thing. I could understand nearly everything he was saying, but I wasn't confident, because I wasn't practicing. You know what I mean? It's like anything. It's like, if I think of even for DIY, I kind of it would be a belief I would have of, I'm not really good with my hands. Now, that's probably not completely true, because I just do it for 5 minutes and go, this isn't working, this is stupid, I can't do this. But that goes, I think, for anything, so even with the Irish. But anyway, to fast forward, my son was already born, and then he was a couple of months old, so still nothing. And then I was working with someone who was raising their child bilingual. So I think his wife was from Brazil, so it was like, so anyway, I asked him, God, how is it really complicated? How do you do it? And all he said was, one parent speaks one language, the other speaks the other. That's all it has to do. I was like, all right, do you think I could do it with my son? And he was like, yeah, well, he was like 5 months old. He went, yeah, he's well young enough. So I was like, right. So I don't know why, like, it wasn't something that was on my prominent in my mind. I want to do this. It was just something something clicked, and I went, I want to do that. And so I did it initially for him. It was like, this will be a nice thing for him. But I got like it back tenfold, because obviously with that, I fell back in love with it. Wow. I got to use it every day. But even then, like, I remember a time when I was first doing it where I was, again, even embarrassed to be speaking, because I wouldn't have been speaking Irish in front of Colette, my partner. So I wasn't used to that. So I remember she was cooking something, and she was like, why are you whispering? Because I was over like talking to this little baby, but I wasn't. I was still embarrassed to speak it out loud. So even that, like, but
is she Irish as well? Yes, she's.
I got a couple of fucking, like, no, again, she's from England, so it would be it's more difficult for her. But yeah, she definitely knows more than she probably said. But she would say languages aren't her greatest, her greatest thing. But I think she does. Yeah, she would know, please, thank you, and stuff like that. And she would respect it big time, and would probably love to have it.
Yeah.
But that was it. So then over the few years, and I just kind of fell in love with it. And I remember my mother actually saying to me before that, if you have kids, that, you'll do things for your kids that you'd never do for yourself. I remember, like, not really grasping that, but I think like that I would have been, people say, but if it was really important, you do it. Yeah. Well, actually with that, I would have spoken all day long till the cows come home. I should go to a class, I should do this. But I did it for him, but I ended up, I got it back, if that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of it then. And then it kind of just started coming into my work in terms of, I was always doing a bit of meditation and workshops around that, and then it was just kind of, I wonder how I can combine, because I think I might have put up a video randomly, because I don't, except for my close friends, no one knew that I was speaking Irish to my son all the time, and I think I put up maybe on Instagram once, I thought, this is kind of my story with it, just kind of outlining that, and there was a massive response. So that was it, and then it was just kind of combining it with some of the workshops. So what is my goal? A very long-winded answer. Yeah, I think it's definitely to hopefully have people let go a bit of the shame. Again, having these, a lot of the workshops are having this conversation around actually, okay, let's talk about this and even bad experiences or why we think, and touching on all different topics on that, that it becomes a bit more like, oh, of course we actually have such shame around it because of this, and this, all these different things from past and present. And then hopefully maybe inviting a little bit, whether that's a bit of inspiration, but even spiritually, like, bringing in maybe a little couple of fuckle in your prayers or something like that, or even in meditation, using a couple of words in Irish, a little gateway into it. Because I know people had said to me, I'd done a workshop before, maybe on a little bit of Sanskrit, and then I combined that with a bit of Irish, and the first meditation, they were like, oh, that was quite deep. But the Irish one, that was way deeper. And I think I found out a lot of people, there is whatever it's, genetically, I think there's some sort of DNA activation. I don't know what it is, but I've heard it more and more from people that it resonates with them deeper, because I suppose it's only 2 or 3 generations ago that most of us, probably the mid 19th century, were speaking Irish. It's not that long. We're not talking 1,000 years ago. It's like 150.
Yeah. I've definitely had even, it's weird. One day I noticed I want to start doing it or making videos about it. Not about it, but just doing it. But videos like showing, basically, So there's a lot of like Tibetan mantras and stuff that I like saying, and stuff where I'd like. Cause even when I was younger, I started like looking up like I just got so fascinated with. I came across the book of the Dead.
Tibetan book of the Dead.
I came across that at a young age. I kind of obsessed with so anyway, I started researching all these Tibetan mantras, and started saying them and stuff and singing them, and started to enjoy singing or stuff, but found I could only do it in a way where I enjoy it with that style. So then I do it in the shower and meditating as well sometimes. But one time I was doing it, and one of the words, whatever, like when I fully let go and stopped thinking about it, and I came out of like this like almost translate state, saying like these Irish words. So it had like at some stage in the meditation had morphed into like
clicked into
saying words that I didn't know. Like I didn't even know what it was. Like stuff like heart and stuff like that in Irish, like Korean and stuff like that. Was small things that I probably subconsciously knew, and I found myself. But for whatever reason, it was giving me the same effect that the Tibetan ones were, which was this very deep trance-like state that I was getting. It was very interesting. Like, and I know that you do like the meditation and stuff like that, but I had never even heard of anything like this.
Wasn't intentional.
It was never influenced or anything. It's just what happened in one of the deepest states. So I don't know. It was interesting. Like,
how did you get into meditation, or what? When did that happen?
Yeah, I do think it probably naturally was the influence of my mother. I know, like when I was growing up, my mother was like a lecturer in Dublin Business School. So that was kind of, I always think it's like her past life now. And then when around at the time when my mom remarried, my brother came along. So I was like 11 or 12, and I think she kind of dabbled a bit going back into work, and then was like, fuck this, I fucking hate this so much. She had that classic like, just, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not fulfilling me. And so I think she was at home for a couple of years, and then she found. She did this course like Dancing the Rainbow up in Dundee, but it was kind of a lot about dance and movement and the chakras and stuff like that. But that was obviously groundbreaking, mind-blowing for her. So she did that. So I know as a teenager, that was kind of a little bit in the background around it, where she was starting to dabble in that. So that was starting to maybe the first inklings of, okay, there's different ways to be in the world. So that was probably it. But then I think it was when I did after my degree in psychology, I was working for a while, and then I found a diploma. I did a diploma in hypnotherapy, so in hypnosis. So that was something like I didn't know anything about, but I was really interested in. And because maybe again from watching the movies, I was just like, what is this about? And I really loved that. But that was probably my first foray into because it was like self-hypnosis it's basically meditation.
Yeah.
But I've gone into a very deep trance state. Yeah. And I think it was from there then when I was doing it at home, it was you could call it self-hypnosis or meditation, but I was, whether I was putting on music or I was guiding myself. So that was probably the start of benefiting from, whether that was 20 minutes ago, and like, wow, I actually feel really relaxed after that. And then it's just natural interest in, and of course, anything spiritually, and then going and maybe seeking the East and spirituality from the East and books. And then it became like every psychology, self-help book, then of course, then every Vedic yoga books, and then I started meditating. So, but it was probably a little bit of, that wasn't completely new to me, because my mum was probably doing a little bit of it, but I was around it. If that makes sense.
And in Vedic, you're facing east right now.
The rise and so on.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so that was it, and then I kind of just started benefiting from it. Yeah, I don't know if there wasn't one point of. Yeah, I don't know if there was one moment.
Yeah, they got you into it. The hypnotherapy thing, like are you able to explain any of that, like on a like what's going on or how that works and sort of like like a brain level in terms of like what's like, do you know much about that? Like, because if you study psychology as well, I assume you might have
So what is it? Actually, no, you can get it. What is it? Is it alpha, beta, theta?
yeah.
Is it delta? Delta is the deepest one.
Yeah, delta is
Yeah,
deep.
so I
Delta's
think,
sleep.
again, this is something very, sometimes specifically for clients that if they're coming from whatever issues, they'll sometimes hypnosis can be, people can be quite apprehensive about that.
Yeah.
And fair enough, I think it's from watching shows and everything, so just like, you know.
I don't want to be a chicken.
But sometimes I would use the word meditation instead of that, just to kind of chill them out a bit, because most people have, but even then, some people that haven't tried that either are still nervous. But very, very similar to meditation is, but it's where, the conscious mind is kind of becoming less dominant and we have more access to kind of your deeper mind or your subconscious. Sometimes I'd use the word deeper rather than subconscious mind. That seems a bit woo-woo for people. Yeah, you can gauge on people, but some people don't really care anyway. They just want to see it work. And you can talk all day long until you actually do it. And afterwards, I go, okay, how was that? And they're like, oh yeah, that was really, really nice. Like, there was nothing to be afraid of. But it's misconceptions people have around it that you're going to be amnesia, or you can reveal all your lies, you can make them do anything you want. There's none of that. I suppose it's a therapeutic setting anyway, so we're not going to be making you run around like a chicken. That's not the case. But yeah, it's just
Could you?
I don't know. I never tried. I might get bad review. But yeah,
I go into it to try to stop smoking or something, and you just like start.
But it is. But basically, what it is we're I would, regardless when people come in, you're teaching them to relax. Most of us need to chill out, regardless of what it is. And the more relaxed we are, the more we're open to new ideas. So, I always do the example, if you're late for work or whatever appointment and you can't find your keys and you're kind of freaking out in the house. But anyway, at some point, as much as you could be trashing around like a bull, at some point, and you still haven't found them, you realize, all right, I have to take a deep breath here. They have to be here somewhere. And in that moment, you realize, they're in your hands or whatever. So that's where, like, when we're stressed and we're kind of very narrow-minded. And then the more relaxed we are, the more we're open to new ideas. So that's why in meditation, but in hypnosis, you're more open to suggestion because you're really, really relaxed. That kind of makes sense. And it's usually suggestions that are for your benefit, that you agree with. You're not, again, going to be like, dancing like a chicken or whatever like that. But it's very, very like meditation. Not the same, but very, very similar to it. And you're kind of bypassing that part of you that usually, if you were like, oh, I'm going to come for quitting smoking, and we just verbally spoke to this of like, when you leave here, you're going to be smoke-free. One part is, okay, grand, but your kind of critical factors and go, what the hell is he talking about? I've paid him, €60. So in hypnosis, we're kind of bypassing that little voice. So I've heard it before, your deeper mind is kind of like a 5 or 6 year old that takes everything literally. So then the suggestions you're given can have more of an ability to stick.
I think it's interesting as well, because it does seem like for a lot of people that I know I've talked to someone before who like would see it as like, wouldn't be spiritual, see it as like hocus pocus and stuff. But this same person had told me before that, because I really believe I came across like hypnotherapy stuff, never done it myself, just like was reading up about it and mad interested, even from a psychological standpoint when I was younger, and I was talking to someone about it, and they were telling me that they didn't believe it or whatever, but I just remember them telling, like trying to explain to them, because they used to tell themselves that like it was like a thing with them and loads of my friends as well who were well able to tell themselves that they are shit, like, and over again tell themselves that they are shit and they couldn't do this. That's literally what you're doing, except what you're doing is you're allowing people to let go of the part that doesn't believe in. So everyone either has that. Either everyone that walks around, we're either telling ourselves we're good at this, or some people, a lot of us will go between one world, positive and negative. But we are always telling ourselves we're something constantly.
You're dropping in those seeds constantly.
So if we're able to believe, and everyone's able to know, like the whole world can agree that like telling yourself that you're shit is a thing, that's a more common accepted thing. But then when you tell someone that, you can go into a space and tell yourself you're good, they go, that's hocus pocus. But it's like, it's not, like, it's like the exact same thing.
One of my teachers, actually, he does a lot of work. He's a shamanic practitioner, and he does a lot of work for the last 10, 15 years. He's from the UK with the Wera people in Mexico. So they're an indigenous tribe over there, that indigenous people who, they have a kind of an unbroken lineage. So they have, despite like the Spanish conquistadors and whatnot, they've kept their lineage just about. But from like hanging out with them, he realized that like we are great at we think of curses and stuff like that. We're like, that's not real, it's hocus pocus and whatever. But actually, he was like, we we invariably are excellent in the West anyway. We are cursing ourselves all the time with those self-fulfilling attitudes of negativity, and we're not very good at actually open healing for ourselves. We shut it off quite quickly, and he found it with them. They were kind of like, they couldn't understand the concept of why would you curse yourself? Why would you speak ill of yourself? They couldn't comprehend that, and that's so normal to us. That seems so normal, but it is like, what? Why would I actually have such a negative opinion of myself? Why would I do that? It doesn't serve anyone.
It is funny because that's what, when you break it down, that's what the idea of the hocus pocus is that we're proud of ourselves, or like, well, that's the real hocus pocus in Ireland, or the voodoo is.
It's like anything else, unless you try it, like whatever. If it's working for you, whatever your way of life, but it's not to me. Anything that's unknown can seem as alien, foreign,
It's always so interesting as well because you have like especially hypnotherapy is very much used in Western sort of practices, as in it's not like, there's realms where it's coming from like a spiritual angle, and then there's realms where it's coming from like a psychological angle, and both have merit and both have worked and stuff like that. There's some doctors who would be very much like, maybe 80, something like that, but they can still use it in a psychological standpoint. And what's interesting to me is, because my whole belief is that that the brain is in the spiritual community, in spirituality, I feel like the brain is the most undervalued aspect of spirituality. Like, I truly believe that, like, all the power, or all spirit, like, I see the brain as the most spiritual thing, and I think that's why it works so well. So if I do tell myself I'm shit, well, like, in the context of controlling my reality, then my brain becomes my god, as in it will decide based on what I'm telling it where I'll end up. So if I tell my brain that I'm shit, you will be guaranteed, and we all have experiences that, it gets harder to get out of that. We'll continue to see ourselves as shit. We continue to see our lives as shit. But when you do, and you can fake it till you make it, but when you do, and that's what I did as well. I didn't believe it when I started telling myself I was good, but I said it enough times where some little part of me deep inside grabbed onto it. And I think that's what's like really interesting, is both from a psychological and spiritual side. Like, both are calling the other nonsense, but I really feel like they're both just coming at it the same way. It's just, we're not.
I would agree. I think most of us, and this goes for a lot of stuff for Western medicine, or and it could be working shamanism or whatever. It doesn't matter what I think we're all saying the same thing, but just in different ways.
Yeah, and it's like we just can't hear each. It's so strange to watch, like, but I think it's getting there though. I think like it's starting to hear each other.
And you have confirmation bias where we're like anything else, whatever. You'll see that in others, or it confirms for whatever our belief is, and whatever that could be around the Irish language, could be around anything, but then you're confirming that I told you. But there's also good stuff that's happened. Same as that, like, of focusing on. It seems like kind of cliche to be like, okay, like tell me, some what positive thing happened this week, but there is always positive, or even in terms of the idea of gratefulness or appreciation or gratitude, that there is, like, and as much as you can, like, well, this happened, but also it's more likely as well that also good stuff happened as well. But even then, go into the actually what is that, good or evil, bad, positive, negative, is only also a human construct that we've. What may be good for me, you may you may not like, and vice versa.
I'm looking at your Bridget's cross there.
I don't know. Actually, it's I don't know. My mother had it in the box there, and I saw it. I was like, I'm gonna have to.
That's class. Yeah.
I got it to borrow because my dad wanted it then, so he was like, well, it'll become a family heirloom, then just bring it back. I had a workshop last week, so I was like, I'll wear it. So
I was listening to a thing this morning about Bridget. So she set up was it a kind of a monastery or something in the same site as the old pagan Bridget or something. And the two of them kind of get interlinked a lot.
Yeah. And that's what I think it depends. I wouldn't be an expert in Bridget now, and I think it's interesting as well, that, and I think again there's a good example of that kind of. Like, I heard Bancom again talking about that rising of the feminine, whatever that is, energy of. So you see, even we have Bridget's Day, the official one, ever on Monday there. Yeah. Like, so I think that even coincides with that, with the language and renewed interest there is. I think it is something is, you can see it. It's clearly there. Something is shifting. Again, it's not to say that it's all going to change tomorrow, but there is something even to have that. That was a big deal to have Bridget and the idea of whether saint or pagan. You know,
the fact that when they brought that in, it means now all 4 of the ancient Irish holidays all have a bank holiday now.
Yes, and then even that to honour that part, like cyclically, like, and seasonally. Yeah, because it is, and even for us, look, like, it's tough out there now, like, especially in the modern world. It's, a lot of us are. It's tough. You have to work on your kind of happiness, because most of us are fairly miserable because the system is set up for you to be miserable. Like, so it's very unnatural. So it's nice to.
To me, that's also the way forward as well. It's not about like. getting the English to say sorry or anything like that. I think that one of the biggest healing things was the government announcing that the government recognised St. Bridget's Day.
Yeah, 'cause I think that was for a while. It was like it's actually not going to happen.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, all talk. So I was surprised even that it came about. So yeah,
I think that's where healing has to come from, because if it's a systemic problem, and then it has to be changed at a systematic level. And you know, as you said, the English don't have guns in their face anymore. So it's like the real change can actually come now from, you know, the Irish government in place making those decisions on behalf of the country. And I think it's so interesting that like there's uproar when the Irish government make one mistake, but like everyone, Irish people are funny, like, and I think this is around the world, but like no one was like, good job. It was like, yeah, they should have,
you should have,
like, which I understand that, but like I'd love if it got to a stage. Because the thing is they all have egos, right? If we all said, hey lads, you did a good job and we're very proud of you, they go, oh, I want that again. Like, I want them to say that again. So they'd go and make another decision. But when you go, I don't know, like, it's all like, so yeah, we basically need to give them, it's like in real life, likes on their decisions. And then they'll make more good ones.
I don't know. That sounds like a good idea, but I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, I don't know.
Those rascals in the doll.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's strange, but yeah, no, it's a positive thing anyway. That
and that's as much as, you know, it's important to again talk about even like the mourning of stuff. And it also there is definitely hope for the future. I'm definitely very hopeful now, and it's definitely for me, because it's kind of like, I think it can be again misconception. Oh, what, we just got rid of English? Like, no, that would be completely nonsensical. We're communicating via English right now, but it's like, why not aim for like a bilingual state? You know, and countries across the world are doing it, and it's important to, even with the Irish language, that, you know, languages are carriers of culture. Yeah. So you'll see that even in and we specifically have the Irish, but like even for, you know, it's not just communication. So like England compared to maybe like Scandinavian countries like Denmark or Sweden, the English, for an English person, carries their culture and communication, but for like a Scandinavian person, they only use English probably like as a means of communication to non-Scandinavian people, you know. So and with the Irish language, you see that you'll see a great example of this as well is you know, place names. Yeah. You'll find that, and I think there was a show on RT. I didn't get to watch, but a few people tagged me in it, where
I watched that.
I forget what his name is.
I can't remember. He's got John
Creed. That's the one. And I may actually, one or two people, because
I
had done a little kind of bit of that on one of my workshops before. Was you know, if we even give it a kind of a loose example now, not to be speaking for Australian Aboriginals, but you know, the idea of like song lines, and that they're kind of intertwined with obviously spiritually and even physically, to know that was passed on, you know, from elder to youth through to know physically where to even go to hunting to get water, but also even the stories and the mythic stories of, you know, the origin stories of their land. And I think with Ireland, you know, a lot of the place names, if you think about it, in English anyway, they don't make any sense. They're just gobbledygook. Because you'll see it here in, like, okay, so I was actually looking this up beforehand, because like Tibberdorn, what is that? Again, Tipperary. Tipperary is just, that's not a word. Yeah, it's not a word. So that you'll see this, but it's actually Tibberdara, so it's basically the well of Aura. That's what it's about. It's about a well, and even Thurles is Durles, which is like a strong fort.
Strong fort.
Yeah.
It was Durles Eli's fort.
Yes, like that was exactly it. And see, you'll find this everywhere. You know, there's a Boher Boy down the road from me, and again, you're like, Boher Boy, not a word. But then you look at the Irish translation, it's on Boher Boy, so like the yellow road. So again, and then I was talking to someone about that, maybe, you know, like carrying butter and stuff up and down the road to make it like there's a story behind it, or places like any place names, they're describing the local environment. There's something about that. But when probably a settler or someone English speaking heard the word, wrote it down phonetically in English, and that's where you get like Balliala, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what the hell is that? But in Irish, it's actually explaining something. Does that, you know?
Like they basically had two things they did. Like, because I remember looking into it after in school when we did translations by Brian Friel, like that play, which is, I just still to this day I think it was amazing. Like, it kind of helped me look into Irish history more. But like, they seem to either phonetically spell the Irish, or translate it into English and then use that. So it's like for example, like Ballybiogue would be one of the most common place names in Ireland. When you look, like, there's a place near here called Littleton, which is just little town. But then you also have Ballybegs. So it's like they're both Ballybug, but some of them got literally
It's
translated.
lost. It
Yeah.
is. And that's why I was arguing, let's say we were to fast forward 50 years and everyone was just like, I don't give a shit about Irish. You would lose all that. You'd lose all the stories because, again, they're telling you something. And even, did I hear, was Eddie Lennon on this podcast?
Yeah.
Which is, I may check that out, actually.
Yeah, he was.
Big fan of
good.
him. But I remember him saying before, you know, about a quote of, you know, historically our roots were weren't spread very wide, but very deep.
Yeah.
And now we're the kind of opposite. We're spread very wide, but not very deep.
Yeah.
You know, with the local environment. And even I think even over the last year, in terms of land and connection, even like, do I know, even in Ireland, like, do I know the local trees? Do I know, like, which I actually didn't. I was openly about last January. I was like, Jesus, do I actually know? And I knew very little. Same, but sometimes you'll get, you know, when people have like, power animals, a coyote, a jaguar, or a hummingbird, which is that's wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also, like, I wonder how the fox feels, or the owl, or do you know what I mean? Sometimes, again, maybe it's, as much as there's nothing wrong with going seeking out there, but also, coming back to Ireland, this land doesn't have to be Ireland, but anywhere of a connection, even for ourselves, for our own, I don't know, mental health can help with a connection to a local environment. And anyway, definitely with place names, there's great examples of place names. There's one in I think it might have gotten it from Mancon's book, but it was, you know, Knocknaferna in outside of Dare village in Limerick.
Okay.
And that actually comes from a Canuck Dun Earna. So it's like Don's Hill of Truth. So Don, or Donn, Dun, is Amergin. You know, Amergin was like the druid who landed on the Malaysians that came onto Ireland and kind of banished the two of the Donnan. But he, on the journey over there, his brother, it was said, was drowned, and all of his kind of kin. But when he landed on Ireland, he like sung, I don't know if you've heard of the Song of Amergin. And that was supposed to be a song that like propelled Ireland into being to what we know now. But anyway, he reincarnated, like kind of brought Don back from the dead and made him king of the Munster fairies, and that's where that was his place. So Knocknaferna is actually Knocknaferna, like the Hill of Truth, Don's Hill of Truth. So anyway, even in that one, you'll see there's so much to it. There's one in like, I had to look at it before because I was doing it on place name, so I was like, what's the longest name? And the longest name is in Connemara. I can actually pronounce it in Irish, but if I'm doing it in English, it's kind of like Muchan Idir Gá Hália. Something like that. Anyway, but in which means absolutely not. But in Irish, it's Muchanach Idir Gá Hália, so it's like a pig-shaped hill between two seas.
It's mad, like.
Do you know what I mean? So it is actually telling you. But if you didn't speak Irish, you'd be like, that's gobbledygook, you know. So they're good examples of kind of connecting, maybe even for kids, maybe of connecting. I think actually Eddie Lennon spoke with that of trees and stuff to get kids into that kind of connection to.
And we finish up now, but I was just thinking on that, like with the place names, do you have like, is there any, because like, the Irish language is like very poetic in its translations, and it's like so like sometimes specific, poetic, but like a bit like abstract. Is there any like, what's like a saying or anything that stands out to you the most as the most like something that's, because there's a lot of time you'd see this very mundane English sentence that we say or everyday thing, but then when it's translated, it's like this work of art. Like, could you think of it off the top of your head?
Jesus, you put me under pressure. As you were saying, I was thinking, I've gone completely blank. What would be poetic?
Like
I can think of, like, you know, words are
okay. Well, yeah.
I'd love to say I can ream out some lovely poem, but actually I probably couldn't in this moment.
Yeah.
I can think of what I used to always love. It's very simple. It's great for like anyone was like that. Of using specific names. I think Mancon did a bit of this, where I got a bit inspired of using one or two words, and you know that can mean a lot of things. But one of them I always loved was the word for ladybird. Okay. Did anyone know this?
No.
So this is a great one. This works for like kids or adults, but I find this like it was like a key to unlock, like opening the heart. It was this simple word. So in Irish, Oscuelga, it's Bowen Day. So Bowen Day is God's little cow.
Wow.
And I think everyone's like, oh.
That's nice.
And what was interesting was that I said that I was doing my kind of workshop, and at one stage there was a Russian woman there and a Polish woman, and they both came up to me afterwards and said it's the same in their language.
Wow,
that blew my fucking mind.
Did they say God's?
I think so.
Wow.
That's what they told me anyway. The Russian lady said that, and then the Polish woman, it's the same.
Yeah.
So there's like an Indo-European thing there, but
so interesting, like.
The other thing I think is cool is sometimes Irish words that English people use it without realising it.
Yeah, I think I saw it. There's a great account. I think it's Molly, Irish Molly or something on Instagram, and she does a lot of that where it's kind of, some of them are guests and some of them are for sure of, you know, even like so long. Smithereeny, yeah. But like I think even America, you know, like so long in America is like salon, comes from salon, you know, stuff like that. There's a lot of them. Plumos.
Yeah,
Plumos and something. That's Irish, like.
What's Plumos?
It's kind of like flattery or something like that.
All right.
But there's a good lot, and it's only when somebody points it out you go, shit, I never noticed that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones.
What was the smithereens one? I don't know.
Schmitterini is like tiny little bits, like.
Is it? Oh, that's crazy.
English people now say smithereens.
Yeah, everyone does. Yeah.
But again, and that's the effect that I always do find it
class.
amazing that Irish for such a dot on the world map has had such a significant impact, maybe because of the mass emigration, because of famine, whatever. Unbelievable.
But there's loads of them that are actually Irish words.
There's loads of them. I can't think of them now.
Yeah. Look,
it might come back to me, but there's one or two. There's a lot of them like that that are like, oh my god.
Yeah,
that's funny. We'll finish up now. Sure, hopefully we'll do another part as well. We'll all come with words the next time to show our we'll practice our skills, and hopefully someday we'll be able to do a podcast with you, Oscar.
I'd love to try
That'd be
it.
class.
Yeah, why not?
Or even like,
but even I would even say honestly, even that like I've learned myself sometimes. If you don't know the word, just say it in English and carry on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be this perfect. I remember listening sometimes on Radio on the Gaels or on podcast. They're dropping in English words every once in a while. It's
cool.
It's just things we tell ourselves that it has to be either perfect or I won't speak at all.
Exactly.
So.
That's cool. So people like put the link to your I put your link to your Instagram below. People follow you.
Yeah,
there
Conchobhar Ruadh is
the other one last question. Do you know how to say our podcast name? Everything from Nothing. I've actually
everything
never
from Nothing. So that'd be like Gockrud O. Like Fwack could be like.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool.
Gockrud O. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Gockain Road would be kind of like everything. Gockrud, Gockain Road, Gockilla Road. Oh, Niada.
Yeah.
Better.
Okay.
Rudding.
That's nice.
But again, I always say not an expert. It was terrible translation, but
thanks a million for coming on. I really appreciate you sharing your kind what's the word, like the one thing as well I noticed about you have very much I love meeting people who are promoting the new promote Irish in a way that's not of that like very fight way,
non-violent way.
It's like the energy. I think
it's a bonus if we're not hitting you. Like
the comeback is like that John O'Donoghue type of energy. I've seen a lot more of that lately as well. Like that, very much like I don't know, genuine love for the thing. So it's appreciate you coming on and sharing that. And thanks Stevie for torturing yourself. He once again from being here.
You got through.
Without looking at your phone. We appreciate that as well. Do you have anything to say to the folks, Stevie?
To be fair, I was like, I had my phone there, and then all of a sudden you're like, we're starting. There was no warning, and I had to finish what I was saying.
I would have I know Stevie loves the show.
I do love being here.
I know. Right. Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. If you want to support the show, you can click the link below. buymeacoffee.com /@Ireland's podcast, isn't it?
Or just put money in the letterbox. 53 Matthew Avenue.
I realised we should actually start. Anyway, I'll say this after. But anyway, right. Thanks to everyone. Bye. See you next week.
Good luck.
Taste of strawberry medicine as it runs down my neck. I feel it draw me in, and when it settles on my mind, just know you'll find me there inside.